Some secrets don't hide in locked boxes or dusty drawers or forgotten corners. Some secrets hide in places so close, so ordinary, so painfully simple, you only find them when life decides you're finally ready. I learned that on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the day I lifted my mother's pillow and found the letter with my real name on it. And if you're hearing my voice right now, I want you to understand something. I wasn't looking for the truth that day. I wasn't searching for anything at all. The truth found me. The day began the way calm days usually begin, with soft light, slow moments, and the kind of silence that feels like the house is gently breathing. The curtains were half closed, letting sunlight trail across the carpet in pale golden ribbons. Dust floated in those beams, twirling like tiny silent dancers every time I walked by. Mom was tired again, the kind of tired she tried to hide behind her smile. Her steps were slower, her shoulders sank a little deeper, her voice was quieter. She finally lay down in her room, saying she only needed 5 minutes of rest. I'd heard that sentence my whole life, and every time she said it, she ended up sleeping much longer. While she slept, I started cleaning. Not because I had to, but because it felt comforting. Like I was keeping the house breathing for her. I folded laundry. I dusted the shelves she hadn't touched in months. I watered her plants, most of them dry at the edges, but stubbornly alive, like her. When I walked into her bedroom, the air felt different, cooler, softer, almost sacred. The window was cracked open a little, letting the breeze carry the faint smell of pine trees, and something floral, maybe lavender, from the bag of dried petals she kept in her drawer for years. Mom was curled up on her side, her face relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Her breathing was slow, steady, the kind of breathing you only have when you're safe. I decided to wash her sheets, a simple act, the kind every daughter does without thinking. I lifted the blanket first, carefully, so I wouldn't wake her. Then I reached for the pillow. The second my fingers slid underneath it, I felt it. Not fabric, not feathers, not softness. Paper. Thin. Fragile. And tucked carefully, intentionally, beneath the place where her head rested every night. At first, I froze. My breath caught my throat, and my heart gave a strange, sharp beat that didn't belong to me. For a moment, I told myself to ignore it, to pretend it was nothing, to just make the bed and walk away. But something inside me whispered, things that hide under pillows aren't accidents. I slid the paper out slowly, careful not to tear it. It wasn't a piece of scrap paper, or a grocery list, or one of her scattered reminders that she left all over the house. It was an envelope, old, soft at the corners, edges yellowed with age. The paper had tiny creases, as if it had been handled countless times when no one else was looking. But the thing that made my entire body go still was this. My name was written on the front. Not the nickname Mom called me, not my adopted name, my real name, the one from my adoption documents. The name only 2 people in this world should have known, my biological mother and Mom. And there it was, written in handwriting I had never seen before. Shaky, uneven, but intentional, like someone wrote it with a trembling hand and a breaking heart. My breath turned shallow. The room felt smaller, quieter. It was as if the walls leaned in to listen. I looked at Mom, still asleep, still peaceful, completely unaware that the truth she had kept hidden beneath her head was now sitting in my hands. I whispered her name softly, testing whether she'd wake up. She didn't move. Part of me wanted to wake her. Part of me wanted to demand answers. Part of me wanted to cry, to run, to scream. But another part, the part that had lived with small aches and unanswered questions my entire life, kept whispering, "Open it." But I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't brave enough. I wasn't ready. I didn't even know what I was supposed to feel. Guilt? Fear? Curiosity? Anger? It was all tangled together in a knot I didn't know how to untie. I put the envelope in my pocket and forced myself to finish the laundry. I told myself I'd think about it later, but I couldn't think of anything else. Not while folding her shirts, not while pairing her socks, not while waiting for the wash cycle to finish. The only thing in my mind was that envelope resting against my leg, burning like a second heartbeat. Hours later, Mom finally woke up. She shuffled into the living room, one hand pressed against her forehead, the other holding the doorframe for balance. "You're still here?" she asked, smiling faintly. "Yeah," I said softly. "Just doing laundry." She walked toward the kitchen, her steps slow and quiet, like she was walking on memories instead of floorboards. I watched her, really watched her. Every small movement, every tired breath, every tremble in her fingers as she reached for her favorite mug. The guilt hit me again. The guilt of holding something she clearly didn't want me to see. We spent the rest of the day in silence. A comfortable silence on her end, an unbearable one on mine. The whole time, the letter felt heavier in my pocket than anything I ever carried. When I went home that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the fan, and the distant sound of traffic, and the steady pounding of my own heart. I kept taking the letter out and putting it back, over and over. I'd trace my finger across my name, again and again, as if touching it might give me answers. Whose handwriting was this? How old was the letter? Why did she hide it? Why under her pillow? Why now? Why me? Questions multiplied, until they didn't feel like thoughts anymore. They felt like waves crashing inside my chest. By morning, I realized something. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't pretend the letter didn't exist. I couldn't pretend Mom had no reason to hide it. I couldn't pretend the truth didn't matter. So I made myself a cup of tea, sat at the edge of my bed, and placed the letter in my lap. The envelope looked even older in daylight, its edges softer, its folds deeper, its presence heavier. My fingers trembled as I slid them under the seal. The paper tore slowly, softly, as if even it was afraid to be opened. I pulled out a single sheet, folded neatly, the creases faint from years of being pressed flat. I took a breath that didn't feel like mine, and unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, but clear enough, and the first line said, "I wanted to tell you this myself someday." My throat tightened. My vision blurred for a second. This wasn't a letter from Mom. This wasn't written by the woman who raised me. This was written by someone else, someone who knew my real name, someone from a life I never remembered, someone who wasn't supposed to reach me again. And in that moment, holding that fragile piece of paper, with sunlight warming my knees and my heartbeat loud enough to drown out the world, I understood something. This letter wasn't just the truth. It was the beginning of a truth I didn't know I was missing. A truth Mom had been keeping from me every single night, right under her pillow. Why? I didn't know yet. But I was going to find out, whatever it cost. I held that letter for a long time,
before I could read past the first sentence. I wanted to tell you this myself someday. Those words alone felt heavy, like someone whispering from a place that had been silent for years. My hands shook as I read the next line. But life doesn't always give us the chance to say what matters. The handwriting was uneven, the kind that comes from someone who cried while writing. The ink had tiny smudges, as if tears had touched the page before it ever reached me. I swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and kept reading. If you're reading this, it means I didn't get to tell you the truth myself. Truth. Not a story, not an apology, not an excuse. Truth. My heart beat slower, heavier, as if preparing for something it wasn't ready for. I read further. You were a quiet baby. You barely cried. You used to hold my finger so tightly, I thought God was giving me a reason to stay. A tear slid down my cheek before I even realized I was crying. No one had ever described me as a baby before. Not even Mom. She didn't know those moments. She wasn't there for them. But this person was. This person had held me, loved me, known me before I even knew myself. I kept a picture of you in my coat pocket every day. I used to kiss your forehead before I left in the mornings, and I prayed every night that I'd be strong enough to raise you. Strong enough? What did that mean? What happened? Why wasn't I with them? Why did they let me go? I kept reading, but I failed, and failing you was the first thing I ever truly hated myself for. My breath hitched. I gripped the edges of the paper so tightly that it crinkled under my fingers. This wasn't an ordinary letter. This wasn't a forgotten note. This was a confession from someone who lived with regret so deep it leaked through every stroke of their pen. Then came the line that made my hands go cold. I didn't leave you because I stopped loving you. I left because I wasn't safe to be around. I blinked, stunned. What did that mean? Danger how? Addiction? Violence? Illness? 100 possibilities crashed into me at once. I read on. I wish you could have known me before everything went wrong. Before I became the version of myself who didn't deserve to raise anyone. My heartbeat quickened. This didn't sound like my biological mother. It didn't sound like the woman who birthed me. This felt different. More raw, more self-destructive, more ashamed. Then came the next line. Your mother tried to help me. She truly did. I froze. Your mother? Not your adoptive mother. Not the woman who raised me. Just your mother. Which one? Which mother was this person talking about? My heart pounded so loud I could feel it in my throat. The next paragraph felt like a knife. She asked me to stay away from you until I got better. She begged me. She said you deserved stability, safety, love, all the things she knew I couldn't give you. My chest tightened. This letter wasn't from my adoptive mom. It wasn't from a stranger. It was from someone Mom had known. Someone she trusted. Someone she allowed into my life. Or kept out of it. Someone she feared. I kept reading, each sentence unraveling another piece of me. I promised her I would disappear until I could be the person you needed, but instead, I disappeared entirely. A hollow ache spread through me. Disappeared. Not left. Not moved away. Not walked out. Disappeared. Something terrible happened. Something they couldn't fix. Something that broke whatever family I was meant to have before Mom adopted me. The next lines were written more shakily, as if the writer could barely bring themselves to continue. I thought I would get better. I thought time would fix me. I told myself I would come back for you and make everything right. I read the next sentence twice, but by the time I was ready, she had already adopted you, and you had already started calling her mom. A wave of emotion punched through me. So Mom knew this person. Mom let them go. Mom kept this letter. Mom hid this letter. Why? Why keep it under her pillow? Why not tell me? Why not destroy it? Why hide something so painful, so dangerous, so personal? I read the next part with shaking hands. I watched you once, just once, from far away. My eyes widened. You were walking with her, holding her hand, smiling the way you used to smile with me. My stomach knotted. I wanted to run to you. I wanted to hold you. I wanted to tell you I never stopped loving you. The next line shattered me. But you looked happy, happier than I could ever make you. Tears blurred the ink as I continued. So I did the only thing I thought was love. I walked away. I closed my eyes. This was someone who loved me desperately, but also someone who broke everything they touched. Someone who Mom believed wasn't safe. Someone who vanished because they thought disappearing was better for me. But who? Who was this letter from? The answer came in the final lines. I don't know if I will ever see you again. Maybe this letter will never reach you. Maybe she will hide it forever. But if you ever find it, I need you to know one thing. My breath trembled. I was your father, and I'm sorry. The world went silent. Just silent. No breath, no sound, no thought. Just the weight of a truth I never imagined finding. This letter wasn't from my biological mother. It was from him, the man no one told me about. The man whose name was missing from every story I was ever told. The man I thought simply didn't exist. My father. And Mom? Mom hid his letter under her pillow for years. I stared at the handwriting, at the signature. Just initials. Messy. Weak. My father. My real father. The man I never knew had written me a goodbye before I even learned how to say hello. And suddenly, everything made sense. The missing details. The quiet sadness in Mom's eyes whenever I asked about him, the way she always changed the subject, the way she said she didn't know much. She did know. She knew everything, and she hid it for years. As I sat there, the letter trembling in my hands, one thought echoed louder than everything else. Why did she hide this from me? Why didn't she tell me about him? What else has she kept from me? And somewhere deep inside me, a truth I didn't want to admit took shape. This letter didn't just reveal who my father was. It revealed something about Mom, too. Something I was going to have to face. Something she had been hiding every single night under her pillow. And now, I needed answers. Whatever they were. Whatever they cost. For a long time, I just sat there with the letter in my hands and my father's words carved into my heart. His handwriting, his regret, his love, his absence. All of it swirled together until I couldn't tell which emotion belonged to which memory, because none of the memories actually existed. He was a stranger, a ghost, a name I never learned, a story no one told me. And suddenly, he was real. Too real. And Mom had kept him hidden. I didn't know what hurt more, what the letter said
or the fact that she'd kept it from me my whole life. Mom came home that evening, humming the same familiar tune she always hummed when she was trying to pretend she was fine. A soft, shaky melody from some old radio station she used to love. She placed her keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, patted her hair, and smiled when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table. "Oh, you're still here?" she said, surprised, her voice soft, gentle. Too gentle. I swallowed hard. "I needed to talk to you," I said. Instantly, her smile faded. Not out of guilt, just out of exhaustion. Worry. Fear. The kind of fear only a parent understands. "All right," she whispered. She sat across from me, folding her hands in her lap, waiting. Waiting for the moment she had prayed would never come. For a while, I couldn't speak. The words were there, rushing inside my chest like a storm, but they wouldn't come out. So instead, I pulled the envelope from my pocket and placed it on the table. She froze. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, her fingers twitched like she might reach for it and stop herself all in the same moment. She stared at the envelope like it was a ghost from a past life she hoped would never return. Where did you get that?" she whispered. Her voice wasn't angry, it wasn't defensive. It was scared. Terrified. "I found it under your pillow," I said softly. Her eyes shut tightly, her shoulders sank, and for a moment, she looked older than I had ever seen her, as if holding that secret for so many years had taken pieces of her she never got back. She didn't speak at first. Not even a single word. She just sat there, blinking away tears, trying to breathe normally, but failing. I could hear the crack in her breathing, that small, trembling sound people make when they're holding something too heavy for too long. Finally, with a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "I was afraid you'd find it." I swallowed. "Why did you hide it?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at her hands. The wrinkles on her knuckles, the faint scars from years of cleaning, cooking, living. "Because I knew," she finally whispered, "that once you read it, you'd want to know everything." She lifted her eyes, and they weren't just sad. They were full of dread. "And I wasn't sure if you were ready." Silence wrapped around us, heavy and suffocating. I took a deep breath. "What happened?" My voice cracked. "Who was he? Why did he write that letter? Why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes filled with tears so quickly, she didn't have time to wipe them. "He was your father," she said quietly. "The only man your birth mother ever loved." I didn't expect that. Her tone wasn't resentful. It wasn't jealous. It was grieving. Like she was speaking about someone she once cared for. I leaned forward. "I need to know the truth, Mom." She closed her eyes slowly, as if gathering the strength to open a door she had locked decades ago. "You deserve to know," she whispered, "and I'm done hiding it." What she told me next was not a story. It was a wound. A wound she'd kept hidden to protect me and to protect herself. She began softly, her voice trembling with memories that hurt to touch. "I knew your parents before everything went wrong." That sentence alone made my heart pound. I met your father first. He worked at the grocery store. Quiet boy, soft-spoken, too gentle for the world he lived in. Her eyes softened with a sadness that wasn't hers, a borrowed sadness from the people she once loved. He was a good man, just broken. I held my breath. He had scars no one could see, pain he carried from childhood, a mother who abandoned him, a father who hurt him. He had so much love, and nowhere safe to put it. I whispered, "And my mother?" Mom closed her eyes, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She loved him more than I've ever seen two people love each other. They were young, too young, poor, lost, trying to build a life from scraps. Her voice faltered. When she found out she was pregnant with you, they were happy. For a while. A long pause. Then. But happiness doesn't fix broken people. I felt something twist inside me. I asked, "What happened to him?" Mom wiped her tears slowly, as if each one carried a memory she didn't want to release. He battled something inside himself, something that made him disappear sometimes, something that made him unpredictable. She hesitated. Not violent, never violent, just lost. I leaned back, trying to process. He left when your mother needed him most, not because he didn't love you, but because he believed he'd ruin your life. My heart throbbed painfully. And she was terrified, Mom continued. She didn't know whether he would come back.
She didn't know if she could raise you alone. And I was her friend. I blinked. Friend. Mom had known them, both of them, long before I was adopted. She came to me crying one night, Mom whispered. Told me she couldn't do it anymore. Told me she was scared you would grow up the way he did, carrying scars he never healed from. Mom paused, breathing in slowly as if the air hurt. And he wrote that letter the night before he disappeared for the last time. My throat tightened. He gave it to her, Mom whispered, and told her to keep it safe. Said he'd come back for you when he was strong enough to stay. Tears blurred my vision. But he never came back, she continued. News came weeks later that he... She hesitated. Her lips trembled. He died. My breath caught. A single syllable felt heavier than the world. Died. Died. My father died before I ever knew he existed. Mom looked at me then. Really looked at me. With grief that wasn't hers, but one she carried for my sake. Your mother broke after that, she whispered. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't hold you without shaking. Her chin quivered. She asked me to help her, and I tried. I tried everything. A sharp breath escaped her lips. But one night, she packed your things, placed you in my arms, and said she was leaving town to heal. Mom covered her face with her hands. She begged me to take care of you, just for a week or two. A tear slid down her wrist, and then a week became a month became a year, and eventually she never came back. Silence, heavy, unmoving, endless. And the letter? I whispered. Mom lowered her hand slowly. She left it with me, told me to give it to you when you were old enough to understand. I stared at her. But you didn't. Mom swallowed hard. No, she said, because when you finally asked about him, you were happy, stable, safe. Her voice cracked. You had already healed from all the abandonment you didn't remember. And I was afraid that reading this letter would break the healing you didn't even know you had. A tear slipped down her cheek. So I hid it. Not to trick you, not to manipulate you, not to keep you from your father. She placed her hand over her heart. I hid it because I wanted to protect you from the truth that destroyed them. I looked at her for a long time. All her choices, all her fears, all her love.
And all her mistakes. Everything made sense now. Painfully, beautifully, tragically. She didn't hide the letter because she didn't trust me. She hid it because she didn't trust life. Because she had already watched one person break under truth and didn't want to watch me break too. But truth has a way of finding you, even when they're not looking. And my truth had been waiting under her pillow for years. Mom reached out with trembling fingers and whispered, "I'm so sorry." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. But I knew what came next, because this truth, this heavy, painful truth, was only the beginning. There were still pieces missing, still questions unanswered, still wounds waiting to be opened. And I was done waiting. "I need to know everything," I whispered. Mom nodded slowly. "You will," she said. "I promise. But some truths aren't mine to tell." And with that, the world shifted again. Because truth wasn't just a letter, it was a path. And I had just taken my first step onto it. I barely slept after Mom told me everything. Her words replayed again and again in my mind. My father's pain, my mother's fear, Mom's guilt, all of it tangled together into a storm I couldn't outrun. But one sentence of Mom's kept echoing the loudest. Some truths aren't mine to tell. Which meant someone else knew more. Someone else held the missing pieces. And I had a feeling, deep, stubborn, unshakable, that the person who wrote the letter wasn't the only one connected to my past. If my father disappeared before I could remember him, and my real mother left without looking back, then someone else must have been there, in the spaces between their brokenness. Someone who saw their downfall, someone who witnessed everything, someone who knew the truth not written in the letter. Mom must have known who that person was, and I needed to know too. The next morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea between her hands. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady when she spoke. She whispered, "I knew you'd come. You want the rest of the story." I nodded. She sighed. A deep, aching exhale that sounded like she was letting go of something she'd been holding for too long. "There's someone you need to talk to," she said softly. "Someone who knew your father. Better than anyone." My breath caught. "Who?" I asked. Mom hesitated, her fingers tightening around her mug. She said quietly, "His sister. Your aunt." I blinked. Aunt? I had an aunt. A whole living, breathing person connected to me, who existed in the world while I spent my whole life thinking I had no biological family left. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. "Where is she?" I asked. Mom bit her lip. "She's lived in the same house for years," she whispered. "She never left town." My mind spun. She was here, all this time. And she knows about me? I asked. Mom nodded. "She knows everything," she said. "She was there when your parents fell apart. She was there when your father disappeared. She tried to get help. She tried to stop him from leaving." Mom's voice thickened. "She even tried to stop your mother from giving you away." A wave of emotion hit me so fast, it almost made me dizzy. I had family. I had a past. I had roots I never knew existed. And now, I needed answers.
I want to meet her, I said. Mom looked at me with a mixture of pride and fear.
I'll give you her address, she whispered, but I need you to be prepared. For what? I asked. Mom's eyes dropped to the table. For the truth, she said. It may not be kind. The house wasn't far. Just a few streets over, a quiet neighborhood lined with tall oak trees and cracked sidewalks that looked like they had stories of their own. When I reached the house, my hands were shaking. It was small, painted a fading pale blue, with wind chimes hanging by the window that sang softly in the breeze. I stood at the bottom of the steps and stared at the door. It's a strange feeling, standing in front of someone who has a piece of your life you never knew was missing. I raised my hand and knocked. Slowly, gently, afraid of the moment that waited on the other side. A few seconds passed, then footsteps. Soft, measured, cautious. The door opened. A woman stood there, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes tired, but warm. She looked at me not like a stranger, but like someone who had been expecting me for years. You look just like him, she whispered, and my knees went weak. She stepped aside. Come in, she said softly. Her voice held a tremble, a blend of shock, sadness, and something almost like relief. I walked inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and old books. There were framed photographs on the walls, some faded, some recent, and that's when I saw it. A picture of my father. Young, smiling, eyes full of a softness I recognized immediately because I saw it every time I looked in the mirror. I reached out, but stopped my hand midair, afraid to touch it in case the moment shattered. The woman watched me quietly. She finally said, My name is Anna. I'm your father's sister. I turned to her slowly. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She sighed, a long, painful sigh that carried years of regret. She said, because no one knew how to tell a child they were born out of love, but raised out of tragedy. Her words felt like a stone dropping into the center of my heart. We sat down. For a while, she just looked at me, like she was memorizing every detail. My eyes, my hair, my posture. You have his mannerisms, she whispered. The way you hold your hands, the way your eyes soften when you listen, even the way you breathe. A single tear slipped down her cheek. I thought I'd never see anything of him again. I swallowed hard. What happened to him? I asked. Anna closed her eyes, as if the memory itself hurt to touch. She said, he was bright, gentle, hopeful, but life wasn't gentle to him. Her voice softened. He had a darkness inside him, one he never asked for. She paused. One he inherited. I leaned forward. What do you mean? She hesitated, as if deciding whether the truth would hurt me more than it helped me. But then she lifted her eyes, and I saw the decision made in them. Your grandmother, she said slowly, was not a kind woman. My heart clenched. She hurt him, Anna whispered. For years, emotionally, physically, he grew up believing he wasn't worth love, and by the time he met your mother, he was already living in survival. I covered my mouth with my hand. He tried, she continued. He tried so hard to be better, to be the father he never had, to be the man she needed. But pain, deep, generational pain, doesn't disappear just because you want it to. Her voice cracked. And when he wrote that letter, he was already losing the battle inside himself. I felt tears fall freely. What happened the night he disappeared? I whispered. Anna looked at the floor. She came to me, she said, crying, begging me to help him get clean, begging me to check him into rehab,
begging me to give him one last chance because he didn't want to lose you. A sob rose in my throat. He told me he couldn't bear the thought that you might grow up being afraid of him. Her voice broke entirely. He loved you. He loved you so much it terrified him. She wiped her eyes. But the next morning, he was gone. I whispered. Why? Anna's answer cut through me like cold air. Because he didn't want you to see him become the worst version of himself. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Suffocating. Sacred. Then Anna reached for something on the table. A small wooden box. She placed it in my hands. He left this too, she whispered. For you. My breath trembled. Inside the box were photographs, notes, tiny memories from a man I never met. And on the top was another letter, smaller, older, barely holding together. I looked at Anna. Her eyes were soft and full of a sorrow only time could create. She whispered, Your mother didn't tell you because she wanted to protect you. But she wasn't the only one who carried that burden. She placed her hand gently on mine. I carried it too. Her voice broke. We all did. I stared at the box, the weight of my father's life, now in my hands. I whispered one question, the question that had been burning inside me since the day I found the letter. Why did no one tell me? Anna inhaled slowly, deeply, painfully.
I sat in Anna's living room for what felt like hours, the wooden box resting on my lap, my father's memories pressing against my palms like a heartbeat from a past I never got to live. Anna watched me quietly, not rushing me, not forcing anything, just offering the silent comfort of someone who had carried grief long enough to understand it. The house was still, the kind of stillness that only appears when two people are both trying to hold themselves together. Finally, she spoke in a soft, trembling voice. There's one more thing you need to read, she whispered. He wrote it the week before he passed. She nodded toward the smaller envelope on top of the photographs. My chest tightened. Another letter. Another truth. Another piece of him waiting to be opened. I lifted the fragile envelope carefully, feeling how thin it was, how delicate, how easily it could have been lost forever. Anna wiped her eyes. He wasn't stable that week, she said, but he was clear enough to know one thing. She paused. He loved you. I took a deep breath and slid my finger under the brittle seal. The paper tore softly, a fragile sound that somehow felt louder than my own heartbeat. I unfolded the letter slowly. The ink faded, the handwriting shaky, like each word cost him more strength than he had left. And then I read, My little one. My eyes closed. The world went still. No one had ever called me that before. Not Mom, not my real mother, not anyone. Just him. Just the man whose voice I never heard, whose face I never touched, whose love I never remembered. I breathed and kept reading. I don't know where life will take you. I don't know who you will become, but I pray one day you will forgive me for failing you before you even knew my name. My chest tightened so hard I could barely swallow. You were the only good thing I ever helped create. You were the only part of me that wasn't broken. My vision blurred instantly. If you grow up to be anything like your mother, you will be strong and kind. If you grow up to be anything like Anna, you will be brave. And if you grow up with the woman who took you into her arms when we could not, I felt my breath catch, then I know you grew up loved. A tear slid down my cheek before I even felt it fall. He knew. He always knew I wouldn't grow up with him. He knew he wouldn't stay. He knew he couldn't fight his demons forever. And still, he didn't blame anyone.
Not my mother, not Anna, not Mom, not even himself. Just life. Just pain. Just the broken pieces he never learned how to hold. The next lines were so faint, so shaky, I could tell he wrote them while falling apart. Please don't spend your life searching for me. I am not where your happiness is. I am not where your future is. I am only where your beginning was. My chest ached with every word. But if you ever think of me softly. Think of me kindly.
Think of me as someone who loved you, the only way he knew how. Tears streamed down my face silently. And if you find this letter someday, hold it close for a moment and let me hold you one last time. I pressed the paper to my chest and closed my eyes. I didn't know this man. I had no memories of him. No birthdays, no hugs, no lullabies, nothing. And yet, in that moment, I felt more connected to him than I ever imagined possible. His sadness, his regret, his love, his hope, all of it lived inside those fragile words. And all of it now lived inside me. When I finally looked up, Anna was crying too. "He loved you more than anything," she whispered. "He was just too broken to stay." I wiped my tears slowly. "And my mother?" I asked. Anna's expression softened. "She loved you too," she said. "But losing him shattered her. And sometimes grief makes people disappear without meaning to." I nodded, letting the truth settle. I had spent my whole life thinking I was unwanted, given up, thrown away. But the truth was different. I wasn't unwanted. I was loved by 3 different people. My father, who left because he didn't trust himself. My mother, who left because grief drowned her. And Mom, the woman who raised me, held me, fed me, carried me, fought for me, and hid the truth because she wanted me to live free from the pain that destroyed the 2 people who brought me into this world. Suddenly, my entire life felt different. Not lighter, but clearer. And clarity is its own kind of freedom. Before I left, Anna hugged me tightly. A long, trembling hug that felt like the kind people give after years of waiting for someone who finally comes home. When I stepped outside, the sky was dimming into evening. The wind was cool. The world felt quiet, like it was giving me space to breathe again. I walked slowly toward Mom's house, the box in my arms, my heart heavier and lighter at the same time. When I arrived, Mom was sitting on the porch as if she knew I was coming. She looked at me with eyes full of fear and love and apology. I sat next to her. We didn't speak for a while, just sat. 2 people bound by secrets, pain, and love. Finally, I whispered, "I'm not angry." She looked at me, startled, relieved, broken. "I just needed to know," I said softly. "I needed to understand." Mom took my hand, her grip weak, but warm. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for all of it. For keeping the letter, for thinking I was protecting you, for being scared." I squeezed her hand gently. "I know," I said, "and I forgive you." Her tears fell quietly. Mine did too, because forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to heal even when the wound still hurts. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in my room with both letters pressed to my chest. My father's words, his love, his apology. All of it felt like a goodbye I never asked for, a goodbye I never wanted, but a goodbye I finally understood. I whispered into the quiet, "I forgive you too." And somehow, in the stillness of that room, I felt something soften. Not closure, not peace, but the beginning of both. Before I turned off the light, I tucked the letters carefully into a small box, right above my heart's oldest questions. Then I placed the box under my pillow, not to hide the truth, but to carry it gently, to honor it, to remember it, to let it rest close to me, just as Mom once held it close out of fear, while I now hold it close out of understanding. And to anyone listening to my story now, thank you for sitting with me through the pain, the truth, and the healing. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel less alone, or if it reminded you that love can be complicated and still real, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join me again for the next chapter of Tears and Truths. There are more stories to tell, and I hope you'll be there to hear them.